Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our special webinar. Here, the Before Slavery Museum exhibition is pleased and proud to and honored to welcome our Professor Rukuni.
It's 20 hours.
All right.
I'm sorry. Let me.
That's fine. Before we get started, and our moderator will tell you more about our special guest. But first, we'd like to introduce the Before Slavery exhibition. My name is Pat Snipes. I'm the founder of the organization and the director. And together with a team of volunteers, we are pulling together the materials, the artifacts, the presentation, the interactive features for this attraction. The Before Slavery Museum is a place where you will be able to come in the Metro Atlanta area and view the ancient history of the people that were scattered in the transatlantic slave trade. So where we came from, who are we? What was life like before colonialism and before the slave trade? Again, my name is Pat Snipes, and together with me today is our moderator, Modesta Campinda. She's a graduate of Spelman University, an awesome scholar who has traveled quite a bit, and she brings a lot to the table. I'm happy to introduce to you Modesta Campinda.
So for that introduction, today we are so honored to have Professor Rukuni, or Dr. Rukuni, who is a renowned scholar in Southern Africa. I mean, you don't come to Zimbabwe as a scholar doing research of any sort and ask around for people whom you can interview and not come across the name Professor Rukuni. He's an authority down here and is very much respected, and we are so honored to have him today on the webinar. So just to know a little bit more about Professor Rukuni, he's got an extensive bio, and though it is extensive, it is worth to go through it together. So Professor Mandivamba Rukuni received his PhD in agricultural economics from the University of Zimbabwe and his master's degree in tropical agricultural development from the University of Reading, England. Then his bachelor's degree in agriculture from the University of Zimbabwe. He has taught agricultural economics for 20 years at the University of Zimbabwe, where he has served as the Dean of the School of Agriculture. He's the founder and director of the Rukuni, Mandi Rukuni Seminar Group, which focuses on management training and leadership, conference strategy, design, and he also founded the Wisdom Africa Leadership Academy, which is a publishing arm. He's also the founder and trustee of the Barefoot Education Trust for Africa, which also houses BEAT Academy and a university. His most substantive academic work has been in the areas of food security, smallholder irrigation development, agriculture policy, land tenure, and community-based natural resources management. He has served on several international boards where he has been chairman, Commission of Inquiry into the Land Tenure Systems of Zimbabwe from 93 to 94. For 11 years, he has been with the W.K. Kellogg Foundation based in Pretoria, South Africa, where he served as the Director for Africa programs between 2006 and 2009. He has also served as a consultant to various organizations, including the Canadian International Development Agency, the African Development Bank, the Rockefeller Foundation. He is a visiting professor at the Michigan State University currently. And back in Zimbabwe, he has advised the Grain Marketing Board and the Agriculture and Rural Development Authority. He has also served as the chair of some of the leading Southern African companies and their executives. He is the author of over a dozen books, including the only 3 that we mentioned, Being African, which will be at the center of our conversation today, and Leading Africa, which were both published by Penguin. Professor Rukuni believes in modernizing and not westernizing Africa. He offers a fresh way of looking at the issues facing the African society today and shines a new light on the importance of embracing the principles of Ubuntu, Uno, or Boto, which are traditional ways of living that were passed down from generation to generation and sustained our ancestors up to where we are today. So Professor Rukuni, thank you for joining us today. And at this point, before we get to questions, I just want to share with you a small video before we get into our May I share the screen?
It should be.
All right, great. Share.
Ruby's Africa. For short African stories and poems. Download on App Store or Play Store today.
So this is one of our partners who's kindly, what we're working with. For those with children or who are interested in reading short African stories, you can download the app and use the code BSL10 and get a discount. It's another educational tool. So back to our conversation. Stop screen share. Back to our conversation, Professor Rukuni. May you please tell us just how you got interested in this area of study? How did you end up like having to study the culture of Africa and these lessons that you're now sharing with us today?
Oh, well, let me start by just saying thank you so much for having me on your program. But you will probably appreciate that in Africa, being born in a kind of reasonably well-off family by rural standards, we were brought up to believe in this Western style education, and it was going to be the solution to all our problems. And then and my parents supported me. I got the best education, and I've thrived. I mean, I've done as well as any scholar in any country. I mean, I've been all over the world, and in my field, I'm just as good as any of them. You know, but when I get back home, then I started realizing, but my education is not making a difference in Africa. It's not making a difference in my family. I'm the only educated person in my family. Some are poor, and I can't do much. I realized that, my goodness, it's a little bit of a fake education in a sense that it prepared me for a world that does not exist in Africa. So I get all these accolades. I'm a professor, and I'm what, and I've published more than most people have, but I'm still useless. I'm still not effective because the educational system did not prepare me for where I came from. Did not prepare me for my African village. It did not prepare me for my family. It prepared me for being a professor at Michigan State or some other place. So that's where I suppose that's what in the Western world you call your midlife crisis when I hit. by the time I was 40, I was already a full professor. I moved very fast. You know, at the age of 33, I was already dean of my school, and by the age of 39, I was a full professor. But there you go. So there are many other reasons following that, especially then if I fast forward in 1993, 94, then President Robert Mugabe commissioned me to chair a land tenure commission for Zimbabwe. And I did that. And that is when it really hit home. I spent 14 months taking evidence from across the country. I mean, I did, with my commission, I did 47 out of 56 districts over 14 months. So I spoke to every manner of landowners and farmers all over the country. And it didn't, and when I went there with this Western idea of these people are lost, they don't understand land management, they don't even understand how to secure their tenure. I went in there with now my Westernized idea of Africans don't really understand principles of land tenure security. And although I grew up knowing that in African culture, the gender balance was unique. I mean, I never ever experienced any greater respect than for women and my mother and others. That's how we grew up. Now I was being told by Western scholars that Africans are biased against women, they abuse women. Okay, I mean, those things happen, but it's not part of the original African culture.
Mm-hmm.
So don't get me wrong, we have serious problem following colonization and kind of destruction of African civilization. And I can go, that's why I've written these books and I'm writing more. But a lot of it is not African. So that's how I started working in this area and trying to figure out how to reverse my sins of being a professor, teaching the children, preparing kids in university, masters, PhD, and I'm preparing them for the wrong world. And now I'm paying for my sins by trying to do the best I can when I still have energy and life left.
That's beautiful, Professor. That's beautiful. So one thing that we know is that people do not usually refer back to ancient history in Africa. It's more like it's us who were born on the continent, probably, who have an appreciation for oral tradition and value it and take it as truth. However, when you get in the professional academic world, it's only written records that are taken into serious consideration. Everything else is hearsay. Everything else has question marks. So how did you come to discover this knowledge that in our culture, we had certain values that are so solid, that are proof of African like cultural civilization, and they are even better or can take us further as Africans, both on the continent and in the diaspora? How did you discover this knowledge?
Well, to start with, actually, it was a lot of reverse engineering because the colonial education and the colonial trauma says to an African, you don't have a history. You're learning an education, Western education that you're receiving is neutral to your culture or your history. You don't need a history. You don't need a worldview of your own. We are going to give you one because that's the only one that matters and that is correct. So you see, that's how they traumatized Africans and then selling them this dummy. Meanwhile, when you look at them carefully, they respect their history, they respect their ancestors, they basically tailor make the education system to suit their worldview. So as Africans, so this is the point. It's when you realize that, it explains a lot as to why no African country has made progress. You see, 55 African countries, including the Arabic countries, not one is a high income country, not one. So it's not an accident. It's not because Africans are dumb. It's because the structural faults that were implanted by colonialism cannot be corrected by copying and pasting Western education. So you have many African leaders who really still think you can just copy and paste. It should work. And then obviously the rhetoric and the propaganda from the Western world as the arbiters of the truth, self-righteousness, etc., then makes it difficult for even learned people in inverted corners like myself to realize that in actual fact, and just to answer specifically in my own area of work, I wanted to understand why not one out of 55 African countries is a high income country. If it's a matter of incompetence, in other words, you're getting the right education. If it's Western education, it's the right education. The law of numbers tell us that not all 55 would fail. At least half would be high income countries. So then when I analyzed why is it that none, not one, not even South Africa, and South Africa is already going backwards because all of them end up in a middle income trap. Not one African country can escape the middle income trap because the colonial economy was set up in a way that it is always going to be a dual economy. You have two economies running in one country. So you'll never have one market. You will never grow your domestic market for your own industrial products. You see, so you're forever going to be importing. You're ever going to be hungry, forever creating unemployment. Because in African culture, there's no unemployment. Modesta, it's a Western concept. Unemployment is a hoax created by Western civilization. In African traditions, no one was unemployed. There was an interface between social and economic life. There were not two separate lives that have an active social life, but I'm unemployed and I don't have a job and I don't have it never existed.
That's right.
So
That's right.
now, take our most industrialized country in Africa, that is South Africa. Just for you to understand what a middle income trap is. South Africa is a population of 56, 57 million or so. Up until 2019 or so, only 7 million out of 57 pay tax.
Oh, wow.
7 million out of 57. The rest are passengers.
Wow.
And you have 17 million on social grants.
Wow.
55% of all South Africans cannot guarantee 3 meals a day.
Wow.
But then you're told, oh, it's a middle income country, upper middle incomes. It does not mean anything because the majority of the people are not part of the industrial economy. Urbanization is happening without manufacturing. It's just urbanization with no jobs. They're just going there for social services because there's better clinics and better Wi-Fi and mobile. It's that bad. And when I give these lectures now in Africa, people stand up and say, "Are you serious?" And I give them the data. You can manage the economy the way the World Bank and the IMF tell you, and you can do your best. Actually, you're still gonna be stuck in a middle income trap. Meaning, always rising unemployment, it never goes down. Always widening income gaps, it never narrows down. and your domestic market is always narrow. The serious economies like United States and China, their domestic market is huge. They consume most of their own products. Export is the bonus. Okay, now I don't
So
want to
it's
bore you with
structured
my.
that way.
I don't want to bore you with that side of it. I can't even remember what your question was. I just kept.
It's all right. You answered it. You answered it. You answered it. That was a perfect analogy, because now you've given us the background. What kind of problems are we having on the continent? And I like that you mentioned the continent, because a lot of Africans in the diaspora have even been considering repatriating. We've got a new phenomenon of a lot of educated middle income or upper middle income African diasporans moving back to the continent, considering doing investments. But we don't know what we know. We have problems in Africa, on the continent, and also in the diaspora. In the Caribbean, those are also similar problems, but we don't know where it comes from. So now that we understand, at least in part, the source of these problems with our economy, that turns social cultural problems, and it's just a vicious cycle. So that's great. So now that we now understand the problem, let's go back to Ubuntu, which is a traditional value, and we just hear Ubuntu, we see it. What is this theory? What is this concept? Where did it originate?
I mean, I wrote the book Being African, and I better tell you that part of the story so that you'd understand the rest of it. I mean, I was working for this American organization, and we would report to our board in the United States twice a year. And I had a strategist, a communication expert, who was an Afrikaner lady based in Pretoria. And each time I would prepare for the board, she would help to put together all the materials, would write reports. I had a $45 million budget, working in 7 countries. So our reports were huge, many projects. Then each time she would ask questions around some of the work, I would give her some African wisdom. So after a year or two, she said to me, "Why don't you write a book about this African history?" I said, "Come on, who wants to read such a book? I mean, I'm an African, I know it, I grew up with it. Most Africans know it." She said, no, I don't, it's not that. Why don't you just write the book?" After about a year or so of being persuaded to write the book, I then agreed to write the book, because she herself is a publisher. So then I tried to write the book about being African. And believe it or not, for a whole 12 months, I could not write the book. I'd writer's block. I would write, throw it away. Right? Then, just by chance, I'm at some dinner and I'm talking to this group of people, and one of the persons there was a psychologist, and I'm explaining how I've written all these academic books. All the books you have read, I've written more than 12 books. Most of them are academic books, boring, no one reads them, except a few students and crazy scholars. The only ones I've written which are kind of non-fiction are these. And I'm saying to the dinner table, I can't write this book, but I'm convinced I've got something to say. And then this psychologist who was listening says, "You want to write about African culture, about Ubuntu?" I said, "Yes." And he says, "Did you say you're writing it in English?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "That's why you can't write the book, because a lot of what you're trying to communicate, you learned in your mother tongue. So write it in your mother tongue, then translate it to English." So I said to myself, this psychologist must be crazy. But I went home and thought about it and said, maybe he's right. Then just to test this case, I had upcoming a 6-day retreat with young Zimbabweans in the mountains. We go out in the mountains to do a youth retreat that I used to do then, preparing young Zimbabweans, young Africans for adulthood and for life. 6 days. So I told myself, 6 days, I'm not going to speak one word of English, and I'll take the whole program in my mother tongue. I did exactly that. And I even baffled myself that I could even do it. I didn't even think I could do it. I did it. I even started dreaming in my mother tongue again. So 2 things then happened. One is soon after the 6 days, I went away. One morning, within 10 days of finishing this, within 10 days, one morning I got up and the book was in my head. And I phoned up my publisher, this lady, and said, the book is in my head. I don't know what to do. She said to me, hold it. I'm gonna organize a 2-day retreat. We're gonna go far away from everybody. And I want to hear this thing. We did exactly, I was now following instructions because I'm realizing I'm a professor, but I don't know many things. Anyway, she took me out for a weekend. I wrote the book in 48 hours.
Wow.
She was guiding me and asking me questions like you're asking me now. I wrote the book in 48 hours. The book I could not write in 12 months. So that's the first thing that happened. Everything just comes back. This is the beauty of the brain, and the whole human machinery is incredible. The brain never forgets. You can forget, but everything in the subconscious mind just need its right triggers. It comes back, all of it, vividly. The second thing that happened was that the youth that I took out for that 6 days, and they were between ages of 18 and 21. Up until today, and this is more than 12 years ago, 15 years ago. Up until today, some of them still look for me and tell me what has happened to their lives. Some are back in their home areas. They are doing incredible things because they believed it more than I did, because now I was I was in my 50s, I think. And these youngsters went into it. They up until today, they are more African than I ever want them to be. They can speak all the foreign languages, but they speak foreign languages as foreign languages. They will use their mother tongue for real issues. So it can be done, and that's why I dug into the history of higher education in Africa and went back to the early universities that were created on the continent before Islam and Christianity really ran down on us. And then I found that it's amazing what was happening in that period, because when the Europeans were in their dark ages, because their monarchs you see, the European monarchs were very different from African monarchs. But when you read history today, the Europeans made it sound like it was the same thing. The European monarchs believed in absolute power. Okay, so a king could override many laws. A king could get up in the morning and say, kill my third wife, she's a witch, and she will be killed. They would say, go and raid so and so, and it would happen. That never happened in most of the African monarchs. Maybe an odd, maybe 20% may have gone that way, but I can guarantee you at least 80% would follow these African Ubuntu values. And it was a nation, it was not a monarch. They had structures and structures of father consultation. The king had no power. You were a father figure, your job was to love your people. So it was a highly consultative process. So when I went into the history of how education and knowledge was at the time that the European universities were coming into place following their Dark Ages, now going into more enlightenment. And I found that we were at the pre-industrial stage ourselves in Africa, because what was happening is, if you looked at the rural economy, agriculture, the non-agricultural activities, the way the economies were growing, if they had not been disturbed by colonialism, we would have our own unique forms of industrialization, which would be very, very different from Europe, because people were already just moving in our own world views were leading us to our own understanding of how to mass produce stuff. So everything which ended up as what you might call advanced education, industrialization in Europe, it already started in Africa. They only massified it. Africans were the first to domesticate crops, to domesticate animals, to increase levels of production. So all I'm saying here, moderator, is that what I was told not to do, that is, don't go back into your history. There's nothing in your history. You don't need to reconnect with anything. You don't need your ancestors. They're evil. Don't even talk about them. You can talk about their ancestors, but you cannot talk about yours. But I then discovered that in actual fact, the reason why we have to go back is we have to reconnect. We have to reconnect to pre-colonialism, pre-slavery, and figure out how we were moving as a civilization or several civilizations. So we are not going back into history to change history. No, God did not put us on earth to change history. We are here to make new history. But you cannot make new history if you don't know where you came from and where you're going. So we have to reconnect, realize how great we were, and more importantly, realize that all forms of civilization today are just one of a potential million ways or trillion ways civilization could happen. Even with African civilization, if you look at all the empires that existed and the kingdoms in Africa, they would all span different forms of civilization. And even in Africa alone, we would have seen many forms of advancement of society. But that was all curtailed, unfortunately. But we now have to seriously reconnect and then move forward.
We are doing it. We're doing it. 2020, 21, great year, great things to come. Anyways, to those who are just joining us, thank you for joining us for the Before Slavery Educational Webinar. We bring you these webinars every 2 weeks, and we invite scholars from around the world and who have the authority and the knowledge of our history as Africans and Africans in the diaspora before slavery and before colonialism, in an effort to bring all these pieces together. We get our stories out there, understand our stories as a people, and ultimately open a museum in the Metro Atlanta area in 2022. So today we have Professor Rukuni. He's from Zimbabwe, but currently is a professor at Michigan State University.
Sorry, Modesta, that was way back in 1996.
Where are you right now?
I'm in Harare, Zimbabwe. And thanks to COVID, I'm not going any place anymore. I used to fly around all over the place chasing the rainbow. Now, thanks to COVID,
the rainbow,
making my country great again. You can tell Donald Trump, he failed to make America great again. But we are making Africa great over here. He can come and learn one or two.
All right, so everyone who's joining us, here is Dr. Rukuni. You will hear more from him. So to our next question, Professor. So you just mentioned briefly in terms of how the ancient politics of Europe in comparison to Africa were, and how history has been mingled and distorted to make it seem like it was the same type of rulership. And you said African politics was more like a consensual process, that with the ruler leading, being a father figure to his people, and leadership happened through a series of consultations with other members of the community and society, which is awesome. That's one aspect. So what other aspects of Ubuntu values can you share with us that are especially relevant to the African diasporan people?
Yeah. So there are many, many, many values that we can go through around Ubuntu. Besides, so I'll do a couple of things to connect. One, to distinguish African worldview from others. You would say that in recent,
which is very important.
Right. In recent history, you would go as Europe was getting enlightened, following the great discovery of sciences, philosophies. You know what Socrates and those Plato's did. So Europeans eventually took the world view that I am because I think. That's how you know you are. By the time this world view of I am because I think, the Europeans took this across the world as they colonized the rest of the world. You would say the United States eventually, of course, overtook Europe as a center of civilization. And the Americans took this I am because I think, they took it to another level. And their worldview, I think even today, is I am because I do. And because I dream. So Americans, I am because I do, and I am because I dream. And it has taken them places. They built a great civilization. It has reached its peaks, of course, but that's how they did it. The Asians and the Japanese were the ones who epitomized this. I am because I improve. Now, the I am because I improve worldview of Asians also, just like that, it comes deeply from their spirituality. The approach to life is, you improve, you improve continuously. There's no perfection. It's not like Christianity and Islam is more black and white. You are good or bad, you are evil or blessed. I mean, there's no in between. With Eastern religions is, you are okay. You just have to improve. Africans is I am because we are. So in our greetings, Sawubona in Zulu, Tuonane in Shona, is you cannot exist if no one sees you, okay? So the fact that I see you and you see me makes us exist. We need each other, okay? Now, like I say, I can go through many, many elements of those African values, Ubuntu, but I have over time gathered them into just three things. Okay, the first element is mutual respect. It's at the center of African worldview. Ubuntu is just another way of saying African worldview. But so without mutual respect, forget about all the other values, because mutual respect means you can be of a different religion, you're a different color, you're a different belief system, you can be so different. But the moment we agree that I'll respect you for who you are, and you are going to respect me for who I am, the rest will be easy. So the next thing would be if we can figure out mutual respect. And you know that late great soul queen Aretha Franklin sang about respect. Only an African could have sang that song or written such a song, because without respect, everything doesn't happen. That's what I tell my daughters and granddaughters and grandchildren. If that young man, he could be the best looking son of a multimillionaire, if he doesn't respect you, don't even look at him. Okay. Without mutual respect, nothing else happens. After mutual respect, number 2 is mutual benefit. So we can go and wish and chase, discover different things, wish work. We have entrepreneurs, but we have to come back all the time and figure out how do we eventually all benefit. Then finally, mutual responsibility or mutual accountability. We all eventually are going to have to be accountable to each other. Now, this is what is missing, not just in Africa anymore because we're heavily colonized, but the rest of the world actually needs it. If you look at the United States as an example, great civilization, so where are they failing? They are failing on those 3. Failure of mutual respect of others, is the self-righteousness thing. Failure of mutual benefit, because you don't need to learn economics at all to understand that. In a world of 160 countries, if only 10 are wealthy and 140 are poor, you're not going to grow this world economy. It's going to still be a very poor world. Okay. If you want the world economy to grow, what do? You have 150 out of 160 countries wealthy. Then you can exchange goods and services, but this mutual benefit idea by the colonials and the former slave owner countries and the former colonial countries, they still want to believe they are the only countries who have to be wealthy in this world. So without mutual benefit, you're going to have a poor world. Without mutual accountability, look at what we're trying to do with the United Nations. Are we succeeding? No, we are not. Because how do you have mutual accountability of each other, of all the countries, when a few think they're always right? They can veto something at the UN. They can tell you that it's only one of me, but
That's right.
I have all the say. So African worldview, Ubuntu is those 3 mutualities: mutual respect, mutual benefit, and mutual accountability. Now, that also explains, once again, you think that I may be crazy. That also explains why no African kingdom ever tried to colonize the rest of the world. It's not because we could not do it. Okay. We were powerful enough to have colonized any other part of the world, actually. But we never did. Even today, it's anathema to an average African to think, I want to go and drill oil in the middle of London. But for a Brit with $1 billion in their pocket, they won't have any difficulty to come and try and drill oil in the middle of Harare.
That's right. That's right. So
greed and individualism is abound. Sorry, Modest.
You're fine. We're enjoying it as well. So as at a community level now, for people like you and me, or young people like me or Miss Pat, we're just, ordinary civilians. Of course, there's this governing system. There are people who are at the helm of how things should be done. It's all a system, right? However, at a community level, we must be contributing in some way, shape, or form to perpetuate or encourage this, whether out of ignorance, or we don't care enough, or we feel weak, or we are not empowered, whatever reason it could be. But in what where does our current way of doing things harmful, and what are we doing right, what are we doing wrong, where can we start as communities? At a community individual level, where can we start to really shift things?
Very, very good question. And I hope you will forgive me for kind of sounding philosophical, but I have to, because that's how deep these issues are. If you look at any problem that happens in Africa that you experience yourself, Modesta, on a daily basis, the education we gave you, which is a colonial education, tells you that there's a problem somewhere, and mostly it's not my creation, or maybe it is my creation, but we taught you to analyze it at one level. But in actual fact, if you look at the problems you have, they have to be analyzed at least 4 to 5 levels. And at each level, you come up with a different answer. So let me give you an example. You've been watching the news lately, and you saw what's happening in South Africa. Okay, so the question then becomes, somebody out there rushes out to the nearest mall and loots and comes running out with a trolley load of food. Somebody is carrying a 49-inch television. Is that good or bad? Okay. Now, if you analyze that situation at a lower level, in terms of day-to-day events, the laws that exist in the country, the trends that we're seeing, there's absolutely no doubt you're going to say, that's bad. That should never happen. That should never be allowed to happen. You get my point? You may be poor, but you can't do that. You may not be able to guarantee 3 meals a day, but you can't do that. Okay, now analyze the same problem, slightly higher level. What are the systems and structures that have created this kind of society, which makes such a rich country, make it impossible for such a rich country to look after just 57 million people? When you analyze the structures that create this situation, you begin to say, okay, now I'm beginning to understand why things may get a bit out of hand if after 30 years somebody figures, no, man, it's never going to happen. I'm never going to, I will never, I mean, I thought I would get an education and then it will happen. I thought I would work hard somewhere and it will happen. And now I'm 45 years old, I'm 35 years old. It's never going to happen. Today, I'm going to get this 49-inch television because maybe that's my only chance of getting it. So you're beginning to change your analysis a bit. Now, analyze the same problem at a slightly higher level. What mental models, what vision of our four, what do you call them? In the United States, you call them founding fathers. What vision did our founding fathers have in creating this South Africa of ours? Or this Zimbabwe? You can go to any other country. I'm just choosing South Africa because it's vivid in our minds because of what's happening there. Then you find that, oh, the founding fathers had an idea of a society where a few white people would keep the rest of the people as slaves and they would work for them. They would always be the labor. They would have all the land that's productive. They wanted a situation where it doesn't matter whether they're a minority, they would be the master class. The rest of the people would, and the education system is structured so that they cannot operate at this high level. They can only operate at this level. Now, if that is the mental model and vision that created that kind of society, the question is, what has anybody in South Africa done to undo that vision so that a new vision can now drive the programs of government, restructure the systems and structures that continue to create slaves rather than seriously empowered workers?
Wow, this is such
Okay.
a deep, this is such a deep issue, and it's interconnected. Yeah.
So I wish I could give you an easy answer, Modesta. For you to strive to succeed, just go A, B, C, and D. It's not that easy. But I am still convinced that the level of decolonization and de-traumatization of our minds, all of us, including our leaders, is far from complete. It's happening, it's improving, and don't get me wrong, I'm not a pessimist. I may be sounding like one now because I'm analyzing. I am 100% convinced that colonialism failed. We may not have overcome its effect yet, but the fact that Africa is still intact, we are still here, every country belongs to us, and we are fighting back again. I can tell you, colonialism failed. What we just need to do is to accelerate the pace of cleansing this evil, cleansing the minds, cleansing the trauma, and creating, and this giant, this sleeping giant is gonna be up in the next 20 years, it will be up. And when it comes up again, that will be the time when you have a strong African Union, which can tell the rest of the world, people, don't mess around with us. If you, we don't care whether you're China, Japan, Germany, the United States, if you put a knee on an African's neck again, you have put a knee on all of us. You're gonna hear from us. And we will put sanctions on you. The only reason why, and that's the day, I hope in the next 2 years before I'm done and 6 feet underground, we'll have reached that stage, because once the African Union passes that kind of resolution and the rest of the world knows this is, unfortunately, Modesta, where Africa is failing the rest of the Africans in the diaspora.
That's right.
I don't blame the Africans and people of African descent in the diaspora. I blame us. Once we are organized enough that the rest of the world cannot mess around with us, they cannot come and make money here, they cannot come and do business here if they are harming other Africans. Our Africans in diaspora will be kings and queens. No one will touch them.
That's right. So, Professor Prof, time is not on our side right now, so we're going to just rush through the remaining questions. You mentioned earlier, so someone just commented, let me just read this comment real quick. Lamek Maachi says, this is very encouraging indeed. Yeah, it's a very encouraging message. Thank you. So later you can start, the audience, you can please start typing your questions in the question box, or if you're watching from Facebook, drop your question as a comment, and in a few minutes we'll be directing your questions to Professor Rukuni. Please feel free to ask whatever you want to ask. So another question, Professor, is, you mentioned earlier that you have traveled extensively in the US and met some Black Israelites based in the United States. So tell us your experience with the Black Israelites and the communities that you visited, what you thought, what were your thoughts? Did it inspire you? You think?
Actually, what happened was here in Harare, when my little book was published by Penguin, Being African, I brought a few copies for friends. And then I got a young lady who is a brilliant entrepreneur. She runs a hotel, etc. She's done great work. And I wanted to give her a copy of the book. So I went over to see her. and she invited me over to a hotel. We're in the restaurant, we sat down, and next to her was this gentleman whom I didn't know, but obviously because he was with her, I didn't mind. And then I said, here's the copy of the book. I brought you a copy of my book. And this guy, unfortunately for him, if he had kept his mouth shut, I would have thought he's a Zimbabwean. The moment he opened his mouth, I said, oh my goodness, he's American. He was an African American. And being typical African American, he saw this book and he took it away from me. I said, you talk to him, let me just have a quick look at this book. So he had a quick look at the book, and he said to our lady friend, I'm going to read this book tonight. I'll give it back to you tomorrow. Anyway, he did. And then he got our friend to call me back. And I sat down with this African American. And he said, I read your book. Now listen, my friend. I would like this book to be read in every African American school in the United States. And I'm a member of the, he calls themselves African Israelites, with a community in Chicago and in Atlanta, and I want you to go and visit them. And as he was speaking, I was being typical educated African, kind of a bit, okay, you know, I wasn't, I really? Can this book be prescribed to all those American schools? And I was just not being very energetic about my responses. So he got upset with me. And he said to me something that only my father or my grandfather or one of my fathers would have said to me. He said, now listen, my friend, you think you're the one who wrote this book? No, you didn't write this book. You were just possessed. I mean, it's not your book. So don't give me that attitude. You know, you have to do something about this book. So I straightened up, and anyway, eventually organized for me to go to Atlanta. I came to the community there. I was flabbergasted. I mean, those African Americans, it was just one day visit. I saw them. I was so impressed. Their communities were clean. There was hardly any drugs, no violence. They're preparing their kids from early childhood education. They prepare them to be truly great Africans who can just do anything in the world, actually. And I wish all of Africa could see this. They eventually organized for me to go to Israel, to go and see the community there in Dimona. And that was my first time to Israel. It takes you loops and hoops to even get a visa to go to Israel, you know. And I did. They got me there. I spent 10 days with them. You know, we drove from Jerusalem, actually Tel Aviv, I think it was. We drove down to Dimona, anyway. The moment we hit that community, everyone looked African. They dress African, they look African, they look more African than the Africans on the continent. And I'm thinking, am I dreaming? I mean, this is the world I've been dreaming of. It's in Israel, it's not in Africa. They think healthy, they eat healthy, their whole diet is they are incredible. I was amazed. They gave me an honorary doctorate for my book, Being African. They taught me a bit about their history. And because we were colonized in terms of our history, I was having difficulty believing it. But because I was seeing believable things, I had to listen carefully. And I could see. I mean, it's simple. When you look at where Israel is today in relationship to Africa, before the Suez Canal, it was Africa. There's no doubt about it. It was Africa. So I'm beginning to think, wow, just amazing how the Europeans just turned our minds. And anyway, so I can say to you, Modesta, that it was an incredible experience for me, and lose their spirit And let me just tell you what 3 spirits they have that is now also coming back in Africa. Number 1, courage. If you are not bold in this world as a people, forget about it. A primitive civilization like Europe could overrun Africa. They were actually more primitive than us because they were more bold, they had more guns, but we had a better civilization here. We were more human than they were. You see? So boldness, I could see these, for anyone to establish an African community in Israel, you can't be any more bold than that, because Israel is the most difficult place to get in. They did it. They just said, damn you, we belong here. You're going to give us citizenship. And they got it. So they may still have problems, persecution, but they did it. So courage, wisdom, spirit, because spirit is not church and religion, okay?
Right.
Spirituality is self-belief, okay? Identity is your most important source of intelligence. Because if you don't understand that identity is the most important intelligence in the world, or form of intelligence, you are done, because they're going to tell you it's not important what color you are, it's not important what language you speak, it's not important what you do. It's the most important thing. Because even if you forget yourself as a human being, let's for a second just forget that we are human beings. Let's just say we are animals, okay? So if you see another animal, the question becomes, am I a meal or am I a friend, isn't it? If it's a lion, it doesn't really give a damn what language you speak, how many degrees you have. You're either just a meal or some nuisance, isn't it? So identity is important before you even become a human being. Who you are determines whether you are a meal or a friend. It determines what you can and cannot do in the perception of others. So for Africans and people of African descent, the regeneration of our true identity as the progenitor of humanness, okay? Every human being roaming the world originated in Africa. So it was not an accident. It was not an accident. This is the place where it was possible to overcome being an animal to being a human. That's what Ubuntu is overcoming, is being an animal to being a human. Ubuntu means, as opposed to religion, means it's God in an animal. It's a godliness in an animal. Now you know you're an animal and you are capable of being an animal. All of us are. You may look at me and say, as a professor, I'm good looking. I used to be, actually. Not concerned. But I'm capable of murder. Everyone is capable of evil, murder. So it's not religion here. We're talking about creation. This is how we are created. We are animals, but we are animals with the God spirit in us, with Ubuntu. And if we don't recreate that in the rest of the world, mutual respect, mutual benefit, mutual accountability or responsibility, we are done for. We are going to be extinct as animals within the next maybe 100,000 years. Will be gone.
That's right, Professor. That was a lot. I hope everyone is listening carefully, taking notes, because you will need to revisit it. So, Professor, just another, there's a question in the chat box. Before I ask the last question. And it's from Lamek. And he says, given that you envisage Africa an Africa that will be free from any intervention from other nationals, what will become of the Chinese who seem to have infiltrated our continent and established themselves as though they want to take over? Is there any possibility that they will let go and return to China? So this is a really burning current affairs issue, which is happening right now. Yeah, so that's his question.
It's a very good question. I've got a very simple answer. The moment Africans again believe in self-determination, self-belief, boldness to create the kind of society we always believed to be, every other nation will be welcome to Africa, but they'll be behaving themselves. Okay. Right now, the Chinese don't have to behave themselves because we ourselves have not figured how to be Africans again. And once we're back to that space, you come to Africa, this is how you behave. You respect everyone. You do business in a way that benefits society. You are accountable to everyone else.
Wow.
The Chinese will behave themselves.
Wow,
The Americans
that's
will behave
powerful.
themselves.
And those are the three main values of Ubuntu.
Africa is not about chasing the rest of the nations out of Africa. They all originated in Africa anyway. As a matter of fact, do you know that eventually they all have to come back to Africa to be cleansed?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's another topic for another day, Professor. That's deep. But I will have to come back to you about that one you just opened.
I'm still alive. I'm in Harare. Thanks to COVID, I'm not going any place. My Wi-Fi is still working. You can, if you want me back, I'll be back. If you don't call me back, I'll remind you that I offered.
We would love to have you back, Professor. We would love to have you back. Yes. This has been extraordinary. Thank you so much for taking the time to share with us and share with our audience. And I know that we're getting comments about it being well received, very appreciated. And so we'll talk and look forward to doing this again. So I thank you so much, Professor, for sharing with us, and you let us know quickly where people can find your book or books.
Oh, the books. You can find them either on the two books, Being African and Leading Africa. You can get them on Penguin, any of the Penguin South Africa, Penguin International. They're selling it. The other smaller books, I think they're on what you call that?
Amazon.
Amazon, yes. They're Kindle books on Amazon, yes.
Oh, good. African Pathways and
African Pathways and 7 Laws of Love.
Oh, right. That's a powerful book too. Yes.
You must get your daughters and sons to read that one, 7 Laws of Love, although it goes beyond just.
That's fine. That's fine.
The African approach to love. That's the 7 laws, yes.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Oh,
Beautiful.
African approach to love. We
Yeah,
could even have another webinar on that, Professor.
Oh, just you need to read that book. Straighten out that young man. You'll do good. I tell you all the tricks to make sure no young man will harass you again.
Thank you. Thank you. So Miss Pat, we hand over to you now.
Yes. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we thoroughly enjoyed this. I hate to see it end, but we will do this again, continue where we left off. We ask you to please support before slavery, our efforts to bring this extraordinary experience to life so that you might visit us in person and walk through this interactive attraction and learn of the history of the people of the diaspora and the homeland who are still there, so that we know our history, we know our origins, we learn the mind of the African ourselves, learn yourself. And that, as Professor just said before, that is key to your existence and your survival and your growth and development, is to know yourself. That's very important. So that's what the exhibit is all about. It's I call it an attraction because it's not old and stale. It is immersive, interactive, challenging, and eye-opening. So it'll be memorable, something that you will always cherish and be happy to share with others. We ask that you support this. Your tax-deductible contributions will go directly to making it happen. Let's see. Our next webinar coming up will be very soon. We usually meet on Sundays. It would be in 2 Sundays, but we have one guest that could not come on a Sunday, but we definitely do not want to miss it. It is Dr. Joy DeGroot on Wednesday, July 28th at 1 p.m. instead of our usual 2 p.m. So it's outside of our normal scheduling, but it's well worth it. July 28th, 1 p.m. Eastern time. Right here on Zoom and Facebook Live. You will need to register, so check our Facebook page, and you will see the link, or you can scan the QR code to register. We do have a free gift to give away today. I know you heard earlier the little commercial about Ruby's Africa, and that if you have children, nieces, nephews, grandchildren, cousins, best friends' children, children will love this series of stories, the animated stories. They're excellently done in excellence. You will, the kids will enjoy it. They will learn. And not even recognize that they're learning because it's beautifully done. So you download the app, you get a discount when you use the code B4SL10. The letter B, the number 4, SL10. And you get that discount but for today, we also are giving away a month subscription to those stories to the person who wins the survey drawing from our last webinar. So if you get an email, we'll pull the drawing, and whoever name comes out, you get an email, then you are the winner, and you have a free month of Ruby's Africa. Modi, you want to close this up?
Yes, so just an announcement to catch up on what has been going on. Last webinar, we announced that we were having a music challenge. The music challenge happened, we opened for a month, received a lot of submissions from artists from around the world in the Black diaspora. And we are inviting you, when you receive email, to participate, because you will be our judges. You can participate or support, whichever way, that's up to you. But if you see those emails, just know it's us, it's the music challenge, and we'll be selecting our winner in the coming week. So look out for that. The music challenge will then be followed by a dance challenge, depending who wins. So look out for that as well. But we thank you so much. It has been due to your support that all this progress have been made. We now have a radio show on Wani Radio, World One Israel. And it's going well. It'll be premiering next Sunday, so look out for that as well. But we thank you for supporting us for the last 9 months, and we hope to bring you more content. Thank you. And also, when you take the survey, please remember to leave your email address and phone number so that if you win the draw, we'll be able to contact you easily. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Dr. Rukuni, thank you so much.
Bye.
All right.
Blessings.